Chapter 481. Ca. The dragon claw interlocked with the space in between the opponent's fingers. Xiao Chen's body then twisted, and a huge force spread out through the arm of the blood flame beast king, tearing it apart. Now that its arms were crippled, the blood flame beast king fell to the ground and started letting out ear-piercing pained roars. Fu Si. Fu Si. Sparks appeared where its arms had once been and the blood flame beast king started to regenerate at a visible rate. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He knew that unless he attacked the weak point of his opponent, that was the vengeful spirit mark, he would not be able to deal any true damage. Thus, he landed on the ground at lightning speed. A fierce purple flame started to burn in his right eye and soon gushed out. A flaming tornado that contained the purple thunder true fire origin flame merged into the surging clump of chaotic energy. Then, carrying a huge amount of energy, it flew towards the blood flame beast king. The clump of energy was already at its limits. Now that such a vast and pure yang attributed energy affected it, it started to crack apart. A hole also appeared in the scarlet clouds that covered the sky. A ray of resplendent golden light shined down from the hole. When the blood flame beast king saw the chaotic clump of energy surging at it, its expression changed. This was no longer something it could deal with. As it had been regenerating its arm, it had already wasted some time. It was too late to try to hide. The blood flame beast king could only raise its palm and form a scarlet flame shield in front of itself, taking Xiao Chen's attack head-on. Xiao Chen did not wish to give it even a single chance. He let go of the saber in his right hand and sent out a palm strike. Shoo! The palm sword immediately shot out and turned into a beam of light. It effortlessly ripped a hole in the shield of scarlet flames. Boom! When the clump of chaotic energy arrived, the shield that had a hole in it managed to defend for a short while, before completely shattering under the might of the clump of energy. A horrifying energy instantly exploded out of the clump. The blood flame beast king was blasted into a miserable state. Its light became very dim, and most importantly, the circular object in its chest now had a crack in it. When looking through the crack, Xiao Chen could clearly see a white light moving about within it. Xiao Chen's eyes turned cold, and he instantly sheathed his lunar shadow saber. Then, he summoned a clump of purple thunder true fire and quickly formed some hand seals. Life bestowal spell. Shoo! A dagger made of purple flames instantly entered the crack. The blood flame beast king roared in dissatisfaction. Its already dim body started to crack. Eventually, it turned into clumps of flame and scattered into the surroundings. Now that the blood flame beast king was dead, Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. This blood flame beast king had been no weaker than him. Furthermore, the blood flame beast king was completely made out of flames. It was hard to deal with. If it were not for the life bestowal spell and purple thunder true fire, the final explosion of the clump of energy would not have resulted in fatal damage. The longer the fight dragged on, the more disadvantageous it became for him. Ka-ca. Ka-ca. The towering scarlet pillar and the glossy clouds above it started to shatter. The beam of golden light became larger as well until it became like a large pillar of light descending down. Bang! 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 Under the illumination of the golden light, the towering scarlet tower started to tremble and completely fell apart. The 2,000 meters tall scarlet pillar was reduced to a pile of rubble. Xiao Chen landed back on the ground and said indifferently, "There are still 3 more. The blood flame beast kings are slightly weaker than me, but their body's recovery ability is better than mine. Thus, I have to end the fight quickly. It seems that I might have to use my trump cards." Xiao Chen closed his eyes and analyzed his earlier fight. When he finally reopened them, he concluded that he had to finish the fight quickly in order to succeed. He had to think of a way to break the circular object in the blood flame beast king's chest, even if it were at the cost of him getting injured. Then, he could use the dagger made from the purple flames to attack the vengeful spirit mark. That was the best way to deal with the Blood Flame Beast Kings. After 6 hours, Xiao Chen killed the final Blood Flame Beast King in the Scarlet Blood Flame prison. Another hole appeared in the scarlet clouds above and a golden pillar of light shone down, shattering the lofty scarlet tower. Xiao Chen landed on the ground once again. His white robes were dyed red. He had wounds of various sizes all over his body and his mind was fatigued. He was panting lightly, so he stuffed a medicinal pill into his mouth. Then, he sat cross-legged and started circulating his energy to heal his wounds. Sha, sha, sha. After the 4 towering scarlet pillars collapsed, the scarlet clouds above started to quickly shatter. As Xiao Chen expected, the cage collapsed on its own. When all the scarlet clouds disappeared, a golden light filled the sky and shone down. The chilly atmosphere that covered the entire space vanished. Pa! A huge golden palm appeared in the air, covering half the sky. The lines on the huge palm were very clear, and it contained a supreme might. It descended and grabbed the strange lotus-shaped flame. For a moment, Xiao Chen thought he saw the scarlet blood frost flame and the huge palm locked in intense combat. As for the result of the battle, Xiao Chen did not find out. By the time the fight ended, he had already turned into a beam of dim light and flown out of the painting. The familiar surroundings of the ancient desolate tower appeared within Xiao Chen's vision. When he looked around, he saw that the paintings of the other 7 people were still there. He concluded that he was the first person to come out. Xiao Chen withdrew his gaze and looked at the painting in his hand again. As he slowly unfurled the painting, a new scene appeared. The cage that held the sky up was no more. The painting had turned into that of a huge golden hand grabbing a lotus flower made of scarlet flames. Xiao Chen thought to himself, this painting is really strange. It seems to be able to suck in things from the real world. If I meet an enemy that I cannot defeat in the future, would I be able to trap him in this painting? I wonder if I can bring this out. Xiao Chen tried to put the painting into his universe ring but discovered a formless obstructive force preventing him from doing so. No matter how hard he tried, in the end, he could not succeed. He could only carry it in his arms. He was currently covered in injuries, both internal and external ones. The yin-attributed flames of the Blood Flame Beast King had significantly damaged his meridians, so he had to recuperate before proceeding to the next floor. He closed his eyes, sat cross-legged, and started circulating his energy to treat his injuries. Shoo! After a while, a strong wind blew. Xiao Chen checked with his spiritual sense and discovered that it was Xia Xian who had failed her challenge and had been thrown out of the ancient desolate tower by the painting. Xiao Chen felt it was unfortunate. Then, he continued to focus on treating his injuries. Not long later, there was another flash of dim light. Mu Xinya had failed her challenge as well. Every now and then, there would be a flash of dim light. Zhang Zimo and Chu Mu failed their test and were ejected out of the ancient desolate tower as well. Xiao Chen felt himself to be fortunate. If he did not have the purple thunder true fire, he would not have been able to clear the scarlet blood flame prison so easily. He might have ended up just like them. After all, the odds of failure were very high. After some more time, under the nourishment of his essence and medicinal pills, Xiao Chen's internal injuries alleviated and his external injuries mostly healed. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and got up. This is as much as I can do. If I want to completely recover, I will need at least half a day. I cannot wait for that long. Bang! Just at that moment, a painting exploded and turned into countless scraps of paper. Chu Chaoyun stood miserably on the ground. He was completely covered in frost, and his lips were frighteningly black. Chu Chaoyun must have run into a lot of trouble at the 10,000 poison ice cave. However, he managed to come out. Bang! Bang! There were another 2 explosions at the same time. It was Zuo Mo and Ding Fengqiu. They have passed the test of the painting as well. The 2 of them were in very miserable states as well. After they came out, they did not say anything. They only gave Xiao Chen a strange look and started to treat their wounds along with Chu Chaoyun. Xiao Chen noticed that when they came out, their paintings exploded. However, his painting was still intact. There must be something going on that Xiao Chen was not aware of. However, now was not the time to think about this. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and quickly headed for the light barrier above. Then, he successfully went through the light barrier without much obstruction. Dee-da, dee-da. Pure essence liquid dripped down continuously. This time, it took Xiao Chen 80 seconds to completely pass through the light barrier. When he opened his eyes, he could clearly feel his body fill with energy. The essence that he had exhausted earlier had been completely replenished. The size of the Qi whirlpool had even increased. Xiao Chen revealed a smile. This light barrier was equal to 2 months of cultivating for him. He looked around and started to size up the 5th floor. In the front, there was a mysterious door flickering with light. Aside from this, there were no other things on the 5th floor. When Xiao Chen stood before the flickering door, he saw a vague reflection of himself on it. The Xiao Chen in the reflection wore white robes and had 18 azure dragons moving around him. He stood on an infinitely tall mountain summit. A crowd with respectful and envious gazes stood below the summit watching the person at the summit. Xiao Chen's expression became slightly startled. However, he still managed to analyze this calmly in his heart. This door seemed to be able to reflect the desire of others. Standing at the peak, receiving the respect and admiration for eternity, that was the dream that Xiao Chen chased after by pursuing the martial way. The test Xiao Chen had to pass on this floor was probably desire. This was the reverse of the test of death on the 3rd floor. This was the lure of life, the test of yearning. Some people had a state of mind that was like a rock. Even when faced with the pressure of death, they would not be shaken. However, on the path of martial cultivation, there was something worse than death, desire. Death was like a rigid pressure, but desire was like a whetstone used to sharpen knives. It could cause someone to fall into it unknowingly, halting their progress. This was even scarier than death. Regardless of the situation, I should just face this calmly. It is already pretty good for me to be able to come this far. Xiao Chen had a cautious expression as he faced his desire. He could not guarantee that he could clear this test. He could only take things one step at a time. He took a deep breath and raised his leg to step into the light. Shoo. After Xiao Chen entered the light, Chu Chaoyun, Zuo Mo, and Ding Fengqiu appeared on the 5th floor. Thinking about it, these people were probably very anxious as well. They saw Xiao Chen enter the 5th floor before them, so they only recuperated for a short while before rushing up. Unexpectedly, it is the gate of desire. After the 3 people investigated the door of light for a while, they finally knew what this door's light was. Their expressions immediately changed and they became very cautious. The 3 of them had gained the qualifications to compete for a spot for the ancient desolate tower, and then obtained one of the 20 spots. After entering the ancient desolate tower, they put in a lot of effort to reach this point. They were all great talents of their generation and had their own unique understanding of the martial path. Naturally, they understood what the test of desire meant to a cultivator. Ding Fengqiu revealed a bitter smile. He sighed and said, I did not expect this, that the test of the 5th floor would be this gate of desire. Desires, desires, what can we do to not fall to our desires? It is difficult, difficult, so very difficult. Ding Fengqiu said that it was difficult 3 times. His emotions were very complicated. In reality, it was hard to remain calm in the face of one's desires. In the gate of desire, the desire would be amplified several times, which would make it even harder to maintain one's calm. If they could not walk out, they would sink in their desire forever, stuck in the gate of desire for eternity. Zuo Mo's face was filled with hesitation. He did not know how to decide. Since he was clearly not confident now, He had to give up on this gate of desire. While Zhuo Mo and Ding Fengqiu remained silent, Chu Chaoyun calmly and slowly walked into the light. He vanished from the two's sight. Zhuo Mo was instantly stunned. He raised his foot and wanted to follow, but, in the end, his rationality overcame the impulse. Zhuo Mo clenched his fist tightly and said unwillingly, "I reached the 5th floor after so much difficulty. Unexpectedly, I have to take the initiative to give up. I don't want to." Ding Fengqiu looked at Zhuo Mo. They had competed with each other for many years already. He sighed softly, "Stop feeling at a loss. One must understand when to advance and when to retreat. This might not be a bad thing." Originally, Ding Fengqiu had thought that the main characters in this trial of the ancient desolate tower would be the two of them. Despite his expectations, Xiao Chen and Chu Chaoyun snatched away the glory. Most of the peak geniuses could take victory and defeat in stride. Ding Fengqiu and Zhuo Mo were such people. After they sighed, they recovered from their depression. Looking at Ding Fengqiu, Zhuo Mo said, "In the last 5-nation youth competition, I surpassed you by 1 move. We have not had a proper fight yet in the 2 years since then. After we part at the ancient desolate tower, we will probably have to wait until the next 5-nation youth competition before we can fight again. You and me, let's fight, right here, right now. What do you think?" Ding Fengqiu grasped his sword hilt tightly with his right hand. He smiled and cupped his hands. "That is exactly what I thought too. Let me see your improvements from the past years." In the vast space, they cast the flickering gate of desire to the backs of their minds as they fought each other. Such a state of mind, knowing when to advance or retreat in the face of desires, would improve greatly even if they did not undergo the test. Even if they did not advance in the future, they could still climb to the peak of cultivation if they could maintain this sort of mentality. An instant after Xiao Chen stepped into the light, his mind seemed to turn chaotic, as if many things had entered it. It felt like he had forgotten many things and remembered many others. Xiao Chen was the white-robed bladesman, the only person from the great Qin nation to become a martial sage before the age of 30 since the Thunder Emperor. Xiao Chen had started his own sect, the 10,000 Saber sect. He was the only sect master and had more than 10,000 disciples. Given Xiao Chen's strength, not only was he at the peak of the great Qin nation in regard to the martial way, he had even more power than the royal court because of the 10,000 Saber sect. Xiao Chen even seemed to be suppressing the royal court. There were signs that he could take over at any moment. However, Xiao Chen felt like he had forgotten some things, some not very important things. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and found himself on the summit of a mountain. When Xiao Chen looked up, the clouds were so close, he could touch them with his hand. The wind and clouds churned, displaying a grand phenomenon. A hint of confusion appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. After a while, he used his finger as a saber and slashed at the sky. Boom! Xiao Chen's aura erupted out, bursting forth as if it had been suppressed for a long time. With the movement of Xiao Chen's finger, a large hole instantly appeared in the clouds. After the formless energy, which was like a sharp divine weapon, broke through the clouds, it did not weaken. It ended up ripping the barrier in the sky and left behind a black hole leading to the boundless and mysterious outer world. After Xiao Chen tore the sky with one finger, the clouds still did not gather back after a long time. He held his hand behind his back and looked at the phenomenon in the sky. He muttered, "Regardless of the situation, strength is the most reliable thing. If I have forgotten something, then let it be." Xiao Chen clenched his fist and the confusion in his eyes disappeared, to be replaced by a cold look. On the martial path, only strength was reliable. Everything else was just an illusion, matters of the mundane world that needed to be chopped up. Chop, chop. Xiao Chen squinted and held his hand up to the sky before clenching it. He seemed to instantly grasp the natural laws. Under the influence of the natural laws, that large hole started to mend. The clouds churned and winds changed direction, everything returned to normal. Shoo! A figure flashed below the mountain. That person wore blue robes with a picture of the lunar shadow saber embroidered on the chest. That was the logo of the 10,000 Saber sect. However, the logo of the chest of this blue-robed youth was different from that of the others. Besides the lunar shadow saber, his logo also had a golden scabbard. This person was Lan Cho, the first disciple of the 10,000 Saber sect master. When Lan Cho saw this scene, the respect in his eyes became even more intense. Xiao Chen's figure flashed and arrived before this person. He asked expressionlessly, "How did the matter go?" Lan Cho knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Reporting to Master, the Misty Sword sect has been completely eliminated." The words, Misty Sword sect, will never be uttered in the Great Qin nation again. The sect master was killed but Chu Chaoyun is missing. We do not know where he went. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. Then he said coldly, "Hand everything over then." Lan Cho nodded and took out numerous boxes from his spatial ring. The boxes were all filled with medial-grade spirit stones. There were at least 30,000 boxes. A dense spiritual energy flowed out of the boxes, blanketing the entire mountain peak. Xiao Chen blinked and frowned. There is exactly 10 million medial-grade spirit stones. Are the Misty Sword sect's 10,000 years of savings so little? Lan Chao's chest tightened. He knew that Xiao Chen was suspicious of him. He quickly continued, "My guess is that Chu Chaoyun took at least half of it away, that's why there was so little. However, there are still 50,000 superior-grade spirit stones and at least 100 spirit herbs of at least 3,000 years of age." Not daring to take things slowly, Lan Cho brought out all the possessions of the Misty Sword sect. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave and stern. He nodded and said, "Never mind, I'll just make do." Bang! 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 With a thought, the 30,000 boxes of medial-grade spirit stones exploded along with the medial-grade spirit stones within. Xiao Chen reduced the 10 million shattered medial-grade spirit stones to a dense sticky liquid floating in the air. He remained expressionless as he raised his right hand and pulled it back. Who? The sticky liquid covered entire mountain peak and swirled into a whirlpool. Then, Xiao Chen destroyed the dregs of the medial-grade spirit stones. Eventually, Xiao Chen refined the essence of the 10 million medial-grade spirit stones into a small pill. He opened his mouth and swallowed it. The pill turned into a surging essence and poured into his dantian, filling up a sea of qi. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and slowly absorbed the essence. After a long time, he opened his eyes. His grave and stern face had signs of dissatisfaction on it. 10 million medial-grade spirit stones can only save me 3 years of cultivating. The amount of energy a martial sage requires is too much. Lan Cho swallowed his saliva. The only person who could speak such grand words was this person before him. Those 10 million medial-grade spirit stones were the savings of the Misty Sword sect for 10,000 years. Yet, Xiao Chen swallowed it up at will and was still dissatisfied. Lan Cho suggested in a soft voice, "Master, the Night Spirit Palace and Misty Sword sect no longer exist. Now, the only great sect remaining in the Great Qin nation is the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. When should we take action? We await Master's command." Lan Cho clearly knew that the reason Xiao Chen established the 10,000 Saber sect was so he could gather resources more efficiently. He had never cared for power over the mundane world. This was the reason Lan Cho swore to follow Xiao Chen until death. While Xiao Chen did not care about authority, he did. By eliminating the 3 great sects and swallowing up the royal court, the power of the 10,000 Saber sect would soar to the peak. Lan Cho felt excited just thinking about it. Heaven's Saber Pavilion. The image of a woman appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. He shook his head and said, "There is no need. You may take your leave first. After I cultivate for 3 days, we will make for the imperial capital and destroy the Great Qin nation's royal court." Shoo, shoo. Xiao Chen stretched out a finger and poked the air with it. Every time he poked, a superior grade spirit stone appeared. Under Xiao Chen's control, 50,000 superior grade spirit stones formed a huge spirit gathering formation in the air above the 10,000 saber sect. Xiao Chen floated up and sat firmly in the center of the formation. All the lines of the spirit gathering formation instantly lit up. Rumble. The clouds churned and rain made of pure spiritual energy poured down. They fell on the formation and flowed to its center. Within the ancient desolate tower, Ding Fengqiu and Zhuo Mo's battle reached its climax. Bang! A palm wind and sword chi clashed. The two were forced back and blood trickled out from their mouths. They seemed equally strong. However, if one looked carefully, Zhuo Mo's injuries were worse than Ding Fengqiu's. In the fight, Zhuo Mo was at the disadvantage. Zhuo Mo said softly, "You win." Ca. Ding Fengqiu sheathed his sword and shook his head bitterly. He said, "The space here is cramped, it restricted your strength. Let's consider this a draw." Zhuo Mo smiled and did not deny it. He glanced at the Gate of Desire and asked, "Are you really not going to give it a try?" Ding Fengqiu looked deeply within the flickering Gate of Desire. Then, he shook his head and said, "There is no need. It is too hard to overcome desires. There is no way for me to break free from this gate before I reach the age of 30, so I would be stuck in there forever. Who, of the two, do you think has the best chance of clearing this Gate of Desire?" Zhuo Mo asked. After thinking for a while, Ding Fengqiu said, "Probably Chu Chaoyun. Xiao Chen's desire is too clear. It is to climb to the peak of cultivation. The greater the desire, the harder to break free from it. In the end, he would forget about his true self and be lost." Zhuo Mo smiled faintly and said, "We'll see. However, I really hope that he will be able to come out. In the entire history of this trial, the 5th floor has always been a threshold. If he can come out, he will definitely rise to a higher level." The two stopped speaking and took out the jade pendants around their necks. The jade pendants enabled them to remain in the ancient desolate tower. Naturally, if they destroyed their pendants, they would be sent out. Crack. The two of them shattered their jade pendants simultaneously. Then, they turned into dim lights and were ejected from the ancient desolate tower. At the feet of the Tianwu Emperor's statue, Shi Hailong saw Zhuo Mo and Ding Fengqiu give up, and the light in his eyes became brighter. Only Chu Chaoyun and Xiao Chen are left. Soon, we will know who that person is. An old man at the side said, "It has been many years since someone cleared the 4th floor. Now, we even have 2 people challenging the 5th floor. This is already a very good achievement." Li Xiuju, who had been silent all the while, smiled. "The 5th floor is the Gate of Desire. If they do not come out within an hour, they will be stuck in there forever." Li Xiuju's heart turned cold. He had not expected that the brat whom he looked down on would be able to get this far. First, Xiao Chen had obtained 100 consecutive victories. Then, he had obtained one of the 20 spots. Now, he passed the 4th floor and entered the 5th floor. If Xiao Chen continued to climb further, Li Xiuju would feel extremely embarrassed when he thought of the times he made things difficult for him. "Brat, sink into your desires," Li Xiuju cursed continuously in his heart. In the space of desires, the rain that poured down over the main peak of the 10,000 saber sect had lasted for 3 days and nights already. Whenever night fell, the glowing rain of spiritual energy was an impressive sight to behold in the 10,000 saber sect. It could be seen even from the foot of the mountain. However, the disciples of the 10,000 saber sect were already used to this sight. Every time they destroyed a sizable sect, such a phenomenon would occur. They knew that their sect master was using an ancient formation to cultivate. Furthermore, they knew that after he finished his cultivation, he would prepare for war again. Now, the 10,000 saber sect was unrivaled in the great Qin nation, no one could obstruct them. Even the royal court's Imperial Dragon Legion had to flee at the sight of them. Everyone knew that Xiao Chen would advance to martial emperor sooner or later. Like the Thunder Emperor of the past, he would become one of the true peak experts of the world. The number of small powers that came to the 10,000 Saber sect to declare their support was significant. I wonder who the sect master will target this time, after he finishes his cultivation. Within the Great Qin nation, only the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and the Royal Court are left. I feel that it would be the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. After all, the Royal Court still has Princess Ying-Yu. She is strong enough to be a challenge to our sect master, she would be hard to deal with. However, I heard that the sect master was once part of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. How could he possibly take action against them? After all, he probably still has feelings for them. So what if the sect master still has feelings for them? After attaining martial sage, the amount of resources required for cultivation reaches an astronomical amount. If he does not plunder the great sects, how could he guarantee a fast pace of cultivation? At the foot of the mountain, the 10,000 Saber sect's core disciples on patrol were idly chatting about Xiao Chen's next target. Gather. Just then, the bell of the Great Hall at the middle of the mountain rang 12 times. The patrolling disciples immediately revealed excited expressions. They stopped chatting and headed for the hall. Several thousands of the 10,000 Saber sect's core disciples gathered at the entrance of the Great Hall. Lan Cho stood on a tall platform, feeling very proud as he looked down at the grounds. Rest for one night and rise early tomorrow. At the break of dawn, we will set out for the imperial capital. The well-trained core disciples said nothing more. They immediately dispersed and made their preparations. Within the spirit gathering formation, the spiritual energy of the 50,000 superior grade spirit stones ran out. A clump of spiritual flame appeared below Xiao Chen and spread throughout the huge formation. Shoo! The spiritual flames burned away everything. Xiao Chen stood in mid-air after all this was done, his eyes twinkling with a bright light. Indeed, the superior grade spirit stones have a better effect. However, this rank 9 spirit gathering formation exhausted too many superior grade spirit stones. It seems I have no choice but to go to the royal court, Xiao Chen said resolutely as he looked towards the imperial capital. Early the next morning, 100 warships flew before the 10,000 Saber sect. The banner of the 10,000 Saber sect fluttered proudly on the bows of the warships. Xiao Chen stood at the summit of the mountain, watching all this with a grave and stern expression. He had no feelings for his underlings in the sect at all. They were merely pawns for gathering resources. In Xiao Chen's eyes, authority in the world was only something mundane, something that held a cultivator back, a form of desire. This was an emotion that he had to expunge from himself. Shoo! With a thought, a scarlet light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead, and the scarlet throne appeared in midair. He sat on the throne and held his lunar shadow saber with his right hand. Boundless scarlet clouds bore the throne. With a quick flash, Xiao Chen arrived before his troops. He raised his left hand and then flew forward without a word. When Lan Cho on the flagship saw Xiao Chen's gesture, he quickly shouted, "Depart." Xiao Chen sat on the scarlet throne and led the elites of the 10,000 Saber sect. He rested his chin on his right hand as he put aside his lunar shadow saber with his left. Xiao Chen somewhat lazily closed his eyes, not letting any aura leak out. However, Xiao Chen's posture on the throne gave the impression of a supreme ruler looking down on the world. All the cultivators that ran into them yielded without hesitation. Furthermore, they did so quietly, without causing any disturbance. They were afraid of startling Xiao Chen and triggering disaster for themselves. Chi. The scarlet mark on Xiao Chen's forehead flashed continuously. He opened his eyes and the expression on his fair and demonically charming face changed slightly. 10,000 meters ahead, there waited many golden warships, the great Qin nation's Imperial Dragon Legion. On the Imperial Dragon Legion's flagship, an old man wearing golden battle armor looked at Xiao Chen with a grave expression. His eyes were filled with anxiety. The qi and blood of that old man surged as he released a strong aura that everyone within 10,000 meters could feel clearly. Xiao Chen sat upright on the throne and muttered, "Nangong Lie. What is the use of a half-step martial sage?" Shoo. The throne doubled its speed and advanced quickly. In a few blinks, Xiao Chen arrived before the Imperial Dragon Legion, riding on scarlet clouds. Xiao Chen is here. When the Imperial Dragon Legion saw the scarlet clouds in the air, the people on the warships were startled. Everyone looked very nervous. "Xiao Chen, do you really desire to destroy the great Qin nation?" Nangong Lie shouted as he glared at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen said expressionlessly, "I do not wish to. I just need resources. All I seek is the peak of cultivation." Nangong Lie argued, "That is just an excuse. How is this different from destroying the great Qin nation?" Xiao Chen said calmly, "Destroying the nation is just the means, not the end. I have had only one motive from the very start." "How stubborn. Don't think that you will be able to defeat the entire great Qin nation by yourself." Nangong Lie shouted a war cry and his figure flashed. He sent out a palm strike, and a blazing palm wind sped towards Xiao Chen. Strong winds howled. With the power of one palm strike, even the air surged. A boundless flame soared towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen shook his head. "It has been so many years already and you are still stuck in the half-step martial sage realm. You are not strong enough." Bang! Xiao Chen shook his finger at Nangong Lie. A huge azure finger appeared and struck Nangong Lie's chest. Nangong Lie vomited mouthfuls of blood as he was knocked back. He somersaulted and his figure flashed. A blazing saber appeared in his hand. Then, the flames of his saber gathered into a resplendent saber light. Boom! Nangong Lie hacked down ferociously. The space above Xiao Chen's head appeared to split in half, leaving a pitch-black spatial tear. Xiao Chen simply sat in his scarlet throne. He could not be bothered to even draw his lunar shadow saber. He stretched out a finger and easily blocked this saber strike. Nangong Lie refused to give up. A 200-meter-long saber light appeared on his saber. His figure flashed and several sabers manifested in all directions around Xiao Chen, surrounding him. Bang! 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 Xiao Chen stretched out a finger and moved it around, blocking all the saber lights 1 meter away from him. The saber lights exploded out in sparks. However, they were useless before Xiao Chen's quintessence shield. Xiao Chen watched as Nangong Lie labored without any results to show. Even so, he still persevered. Xiao Chen said, "Your talent is pretty good. You became famous at a young age. However, do you know why your progress is so slow? Why you are still stuck at half-step martial sage after so many years? It is because you lack resources. If you can use 10 million medial-grade spirit stones in one go, you will be able to break through your bottleneck immediately. Unfortunately, you do not have the courage to do that. So, you can scram now." Xiao Chen's gaze turned cold. He brandished his right hand in a claw and an azure dragon claw appeared instantly. A loud dragon roar resounded. The dragon claw swiped forward and the natural laws changed. Even though Nangong Lie was 1,000 meters away, he appeared right before Xiao Chen. Scram! Xiao Chen swung his right hand ferociously and the dragon claw mirrored the motion. Nangong Lie's internal organs were injured and he fell towards the ground like a broken kite. Fire the cannons. He just used the natural laws and won't be able to use them again for a while. The falling Nangong Lie shouted with all his might. Dang! 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 The cannon ports of the Imperial Dragon Legion's warships all opened. The strengthened ancient demonic energy cannons immediately fired, sending thousands of energy shells at Xiao Chen. They formed a beautiful and resplendent scene in the sky. When the cannonade from thousands of ancient demonic energy cannons struck the body simultaneously, even a martial sage that could use the natural laws would not find it easy to deal with. Xiao Chen looked coldly at the falling Nangong Lie. A murderous intent stirred in his heart. His original thought of letting this person live now faded away completely. An azure finger appeared at lightning speed and struck Nangong Lie's forehead, piercing a hole in it. After doing all this, Xiao Chen circulated his quintessence to block the ancient demonic energy cannon's attacks. Bang! Thousands of energy shells that could shatter mountains crashed into Xiao Chen's quintessence shield, which lasted for only half a second before it shattered explosively. Pa! 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 The energy shells struck Xiao Chen continuously. Xiao Chen shifted his internal organs around, and his expression did not change much. His expression merely turned colder. When the barrage of energy shells ended, Xiao Chen wiped away a trickle of blood from his mouth. Then, he looked indifferently at the Imperial Dragon Legion before him and said coldly, "Scram." All Xiao Chen wanted was the resources of the royal court. He had no hatred for this group of people before him. If Nangong Lie had not plotted against him at the very end, he would not have killed him. It was not that Xiao Chen was benevolent, it was that he was efficient, avoiding extraneous effort. The vice commander on the flagship suppressed the horror and panic in his heart. He said, "Don't be frightened. He definitely received internal injuries and cannot last for much longer. Recharge the cannons and prepare to fire again." Shoo! Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly and he stood up from the scarlet throne. The people on the warships felt as though a tall mountain suddenly appeared and loomed over them. Even their breathing became rushed. A huge pressure bore down on them as spiritual energy moved along Xiao Chen's hands. They could not move about much. Reckless fools. Xiao Chen's white robes fluttered as he placed his right hand on the saber hilt. The rage in Xiao Chen's heart surged. A might that could destroy the world instantly filled him. All Xiao Chen had to do was draw his saber. He could destroy tens of warships in an instant without resorting to the natural laws. The elites of the Imperial Dragon Legion in the warships would die as well. Even if they were superior grade martial kings or half-step martial monarchs, they would all perish with one strike of his saber. A horrifying killing chi instantly spread throughout the fleet. This made the cultivators loading the ancient demonic energy cannons with superior grade spirit stones freeze, their limbs refused to cooperate. Just as Xiao Chen was about to draw his saber, he looked into the distance and saw a golden figure flying over like a meteor. When Xiao Chen saw who it was, he released the saber hilt and sat back on his scarlet throne. Everyone in the fleet immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The mountainous pressure looming over them vanished. Their hearts pounded loudly as chills ran down their spines. Xiao Chen remained expressionless, his gaze cold and stern, as he said in a frosty voice, "I will say it one more time, scram." The vice commander on the flagship hesitated. He did not know what to do. They had orders to prevent the intrusion of the 10,000 Saber sect. However, within a few moves, Xiao Chen had slaughtered their commander without even drawing his saber. The thousands of ancient demonic energy cannon attacks looked very mighty, but the other party seemed to have suffered only mild injury. The pressure on them did not decrease at all. "You can go first. Let me talk to him." The resplendent golden figure moving like a meteor finally arrived at the crucial moment. The cultivators on the warships immediately smiled and exclaimed joyfully, "First Princess." This person was from the royal clan of the Great Qin Nation, a rare genius that could only be seen once in a millennium, Princess Ying-Yu. She was also the war god of the Imperial Dragon Legion. Ying-Yu was dressed in golden battle armor and held the Grand Imperial Spear. Golden flames burned in her eyes. She was still as glorious and respectable as before, outstandingly beautiful. When the vice commander heard Ying-Yu's words, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. He led the Imperial Dragon Legion away into the distance. Xiao Chen watched Ying-Yu from the Scarlet Throne. He nodded his head slightly and said, "Not bad. After not seeing you for 3 years, you finally broke through to martial sage. You live up to your reputation as a genius. Unfortunately, you are still too slow, way too slow." Ying-Yu looked at the Scarlet Throne with a grave expression. The appearance of the calm Xiao Chen had not changed at all. However, he now gave off a distant feeling, like he was a stranger. Every time Ying-Yu saw him like that, her heart could not help aching, like thousands of needles stabbing at her heart. It was unbearable. Ying-Yu suppressed her emotions as she said in a cold voice, "So what? I will still not fall to your level, plundering everywhere for the sake of cultivation, for the sake of climbing to the peak." Xiao Chen's heart was as calm as still water. He shook his head and said, "You still do not understand. This is the very nature of this world. The weak is eaten by the strong, only the strongest survives. All I am doing is what everything thinks of doing but does not dare to do. Now, in the era of geniuses, how can one rise without courage? This is the Tao. To reach the peak, I just need to maintain a clear heart." Ying-Yu could not hold back her laughter. "Maintain a clear heart? You still claim to have a heart. If you still have a heart, then why did you go after the resources of the Xiao clan and the Feng clan? You simply killed everyone in the 2 clans with one saber strike." Xiao Chen's expression remained still. He muttered, "I already repaid everything I owed them. All I need is resources. Naturally, anyone who makes way for me will live. I'll even wish him good luck." A pained expression appeared on Ying-Yu's beautiful face. Blood dripped as she bit her lip. She asked in a quivering voice, "Then if I get in your way today, will you kill me as well?" A cold wind blew, making Xiao Chen's fine black hair flutter about. There did not seem to be any change on his fair and demonically charming face. Xiao Chen muttered to himself for a while on the throne. He said softly, "There is no need for so many words. Make your move. I will grant you a handicap of 3 moves. No need for so many words." No need for so many words. In his heart, even I can only make him give me a handicap of 3 moves. Ying-Yu smiled bitterly as she cut herself off from the emotions she felt. "As you wish. If you want a fight, I will accompany you to the end." Ying-Yu shouted a war cry and thrust her grand imperial spear forward with her right hand. A boundless dragon roar resounded behind her, the dragon chi that had been passed down for 10,000 years in the great Qin nation. Shoo! The space seemed to turn solid as all the aura gathered at one point. She thrust the spear forward together with the compressed boundless aura. Xiao Chen squinted slightly as he watched Ying-Yu, who was 1,000 meters away. He held his lunar shadow saber across his chest with his left hand. In the next instant, Ying-Yu appeared before Xiao Chen. Her posture had not changed as the spear tip struck the lunar shadow saber's scabbard. All this happened in an instant. If one was not aware of what was going on, it would look like Xiao Chen placed his saber across his chest and Ying-Yu aimed for that spot on purpose. Dang! A bright and melodious sound resonated in the sky. As this sound propagated, heaven and earth instantly changed color and became very dark. An overwhelming energy poured out from the spear tip. The scarlet clouds below the throne churned continuously. However, Xiao Chen continued to sit on his scarlet throne without budging at all. He pushed his left hand forward and sent Ying-Yu flying back. Xiao Chen said softly, "First move." Ying-Yu's expression changed. She twirled her grand imperial spear to use it as a staff to smash down on Xiao Chen. Roar, roar, roar. Countless golden dragons appeared behind Ying-Yu. The grand imperial spear seemed to have thousands of dragons circling it, giving it a supreme dragon's might as it hurtled towards Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen saw the countless dragons, he woke the 18 azure dragon tattoos on his body with a thought. Azure dragon chi covered Xiao Chen's body as the tattoos roared endlessly. They were in no way inferior to the dragon chi that had been passed down in the great Qin nation for 10,000 years. Dang! Xiao Chen held his lunar shadow saber with his left hand. The end of the scabbard knocked against the throne, and 18 azure dragons launched from his body. The azure dragons orbited Xiao Chen's head, blocking Ying-Yu's spear that bore a vast dragon's might. Xiao Chen said calmly, "Second move." Ying-Yu clenched her teeth, and the golden flame in the depths of her eyes burned ferociously. A dragon-shaped flame rapidly coiled around the Grand Imperial Spear. The spear trembled, spewing out golden dragon-shaped flames. This was one of the 4 famed dragon flames. A pure yang attributed purple flame bloomed in Xiao Chen's right eye. Likewise, the pale white lunar true flame started burning in his left eye. The 2 opposite attributed flames appeared out of nowhere along with their origin flames. Yin and yang mixed together. A taijutsu formed in front of Xiao Chen. Under his exquisite control, the extreme yang and extreme yin flames merged together perfectly. There was no disharmony at all. TL note: the taijutsu is the yin-yang diagram, symbol of Taoism. Boom! The 2 flames quickly swam around like fishes in the taijutsu. When the tyrannical dragon flame crashed into it, it did not show any signs of being affected at all. Xiao Chen pushed his right hand forward and a bright light burst forth from the taijutsu. The surging energy reduced the golden dragon flame to sparks. The dark sky immediately filled with golden specks of light, like fireflies dancing in the darkness. The scene was very beautiful as the sparks faded into nothingness. When the dragon flame broke, Ying-Yu vomited a mouthful of blood. Her beautiful face immediately turned very pale. She looked very pretty and charming in this sparkling sky. "Your 3 moves are over," Xiao Chen said calmly. He pushed his right hand forward and the 2 fishes in the flaming taijutsu suddenly grew larger. "Go!" Xiao Chen shouted and the taijutsu flashed in the air. As it arrived before Ying-Yu, she spun her spear in front of her, creating an impenetrable light barrier. Bang! 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 Against the flaming taijutsu, the light barrier lasted for only a short while before it shattered into pieces. The battle armor Ying-Yu wore instantly broke. As she vomited a large mouthful of blood, something small dropped out of her armor, and she watched that item fall through the sky. A look of shock flashed on her pale face. She quickly sped after that item regardless of her heavily injured body. Xiao Chen shook his head and sighed, "How can you be so distracted in a fight? Idiot." Having rested for a while, Xiao Chen could use the natural laws again. Just as Ying-Yu was about to reach that item, he stretched his hand out, and the formless and irresistible natural laws pulled her over. Xiao Chen pointed at Ying-Yu's dantian and crippled the cultivation she had worked her whole life for. Finally, he sealed all her meridians, making her unable to move. Who? The troops of the 10,000 Saber sect finally arrived. When Lan Chou saw blood trickling out of Xiao Chen's mouth, he rushed over and exclaimed, "Master, are you injured?" Xiao Chen did not answer Lan Chou's question. He tossed Ying-Yu over to him and said, "Have someone to take care of her. The 2 experts of the royal court are already crippled. I will leave the rest of the rabble to you. I will expect your good news before nightfall." Lan Chou quickly said respectfully, "I obey at the risk of my life." After the 10,000 Saber sect's troops were far away, Xiao Chen opened his palm and pulled over the item that Ying-Yu was chasing before she was defeated. A huge statue of the Great Qin Nation's founding emperor stood in the vast drill ground of the Great Qin Nation's royal palace. The statue was 1,000 meters tall and looked very grand. The founding emperor, Ying-Jung, pointed the Grand Imperial Spear in his hands ferociously towards the sky, evoking an overwhelming aura. TL note: Ying-Jung is also the real name of the founding emperor of China's Qin dynasty, Qin Shi Huang. Xiao Chen stood on the head of the statue. A complicated expression appeared on his face. It was unknown what he was thinking about. It was unknown when Xiao Chen acquired the habit of standing at high places, when he had gotten used to standing at the summit. That habit gave Xiao Chen the strength to stand at the peak. However, several doubts surfaced at this moment. Xiao Chen held a wooden sculpture in his hand. The girl depicted by the wooden sculpture had a faint smile. She looked very pretty and wore a red bra. She looked like a little girl. This girl was first Princess Ying-Yu. However, the perky areas on her chest had been rubbed flat by something. A great sculpture ruined just like that. Xiao Chen faintly recalled that many years ago in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he had to make a sculpture for Ying-Yu every month, because he had offended her. Furthermore, her attire and expressions had to be different every time. He could not be lazy or skimp on it. During the time, even though Xiao Chen cultivated very hard, he still took out time to complete this difficult task. Xiao Chen had produced about 10 sculptures, each one significantly better than this one. However, for some reason Ying-Yu favored this one. The sculpture lay flat on Xiao Chen's palm. He could easily crush it with a thought. A vague confusion appeared in his resolute eyes. He felt some disturbance in his mind, as if he had forgotten something very important. A figure flashed in the distance and quickly flew over. Xiao Chen's pupils constricted and became grave and stern once again. Then, he quickly hid the wooden sculpture in his sleeve. Lan Chou stood below Xiao Chen as he said excitedly, "Master, the treasures in the royal palace have all been accounted for already. We also plundered the savings of some of the large clans in the imperial capital. This time, they had a very good harvest." Xiao Chen said calmly, "Report the numbers. There is a total of 50 million medial grade spirit stones, 200,000 superior grade spirit stones, and numerous medicinal pills and herbs. There were so many, we could not count them all." Xiao Chen nodded and said, "You did well. Hand them over." Lan Chou wasted no time in taking out 10 spatial rings and surrendered them respectfully. There were way too many treasures. One top-quality spatial ring could not contain them all. Even 10 were barely enough. There were still some miscellaneous items that were not included. The 10 spatial rings floated before Xiao Chen. Lan Chou knew that he should not remain here, so he quickly took his leave. Xiao Chen used his spiritual sense and immediately took out all 50 million medial grade spirit stones. The air instantly filled with a vast number of medial grade spirit stones. Bang! Xiao Chen roared. The 50 million medial grade spirit stones all exploded at the same time and turned into a sticky liquid that floated in the air. While standing on the head of the great Qin nation's founding emperor, Xiao Chen opened his hand and the spiritual energy liquid swirled into a whirlpool, refining itself endlessly. The enormous spiritual energy whirlpool spun quickly in the air, the surging fluctuations causing heaven and earth to change color. The atmosphere everywhere within 5 kilometers of the imperial capital churned continuously. The winds and clouds were in flux, displaying a great phenomenon. The sky seemed likely to fall at any moment. Shoo! The tumult in heaven and earth lasted for half a day before it ended. Xiao Chen succeeded in refining the 50 million medial grade spirit stones into a small exquisite pill. Xiao Chen opened his mouth and swallowed the pill. The moment it entered his mouth, it melted and flowed into his dantian. The energy was like a vast ocean. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and started to refine his energy, emanating a tremendous aura into his surroundings. A strong wind howled incessantly and lightning flashed without pause. After 15 minutes, Xiao Chen opened his eyes. A brilliant light shone from his eyes as he said, "I am just a hair's breadth away from the martial emperor realm. After I use the spirit gathering formation, I should be able to cross that threshold." Xiao Chen was just a step away from becoming the youngest martial emperor in history. Even the Thunder Emperor of yore would not be comparable to him, much less the founding emperor of the great Qin nation below him. Xiao Chen pushed off the head of the founding emperor's statue and arranged the 200,000 superior grade spirit stones into a massive spirit gathering formation. Then Xiao Chen sat in the middle of the formation. The lines of the formation lit up and rain made of spiritual energy poured down without end. After the spirit gathering formation is exhausted, I should be able to step through the threshold. Outside the ancient desolate tower, a dim light flashed on the 5th floor. Everyone quickly paid attention to it. Unexpectedly, it was Chu Chaoyun crushing his jade pendant. Chu Chaoyun gave up on the test in the Gate of Desire and was ejected. It was unknown what Chu Chaoyun experienced in the Gate of Desire. His face was sullen as he landed on the ground. He ignored everyone and directly left the Tianwu Plaza. Shi Hailong frowned slightly. He said, "There is only one person left. It looks like that person is really Xiao Chen. However, only 15 minutes remain. If he still does not come out, he will be stuck in there forever." Someone at the side said, "There is still a chance. The flow of time in the Gate of Desire is different from the outside. 15 minutes for us might be days for him." Shi Hailong nodded his head slightly and smiled. "That's right, there is still a chance. I hope he will be able to comprehend letting go. Once he can truly let go, he will be able to turn back." Li Xiuju smiled coldly. How could it be so easy to let it go? His desire for power is so strong. Now that he is unrivaled within the Gate of Desire, making great waves with every move, how can he let go when that kind of power is in his hands? The calmer he normally is, the deeper he will sink into this. I believe he is probably making a breakthrough to martial emperor in there. Ha ha. That is the aim of every cultivator. Now that he has come so far, would he give it up? Li Xiuju's words might be very harsh, but everyone knew that they were true. It was not easy to let go when the power so desperately sought was at hand. Just you wait. We will know for sure in another 15 minutes. This brat is never coming out. He is destined to remain sunk in his desires forever, Lu Xiuju said as he continued to smile coldly. When the cultivators below the platform who were on good terms with Xiao Chen heard this, worried expressions appeared on their faces. Gate of Desire. The rain made of spiritual energy fell for 5 days and nights straight before it slowly ceased. A spiritual fire came from below Xiao Chen and burned the entire formation to ashes. Kai. Suddenly, Xiao Chen shone with a golden light. At first, the golden light was not obvious. However, it grew more and more resplendent. Xiao Chen's clothes, skin, and hair all became golden, dazzling, and radiant. Xiao Chen opened his eyes, his black pupils had turned golden as well. He gazed at the boundless sky and a gate opened up at the end of the sky. Zun. Steps slowly appeared below the gate, extending to a meter before Xiao Chen. This was the road to the martial emperor realm. The peak of cultivation lay at the end of the road. All Xiao Chen had to do was to push open the gate and he would stand at the peak of cultivation. Xiao Chen looked at the flickering gate and a burning light appeared in his eyes. He got up and started to walk up the steps. Thunk. The wooden sculpture in Xiao Chen's sleeve suddenly fell out. It tumbled down the steps for a long time before it rolled to a stop. Stunned, Xiao Chen slowly set down the foot that he had raised. Given his cultivation realm, it was impossible for the wooden sculpture to simply fall out. The only way that could happen was if his mental state was shaken. How can it be? I have always been focused on the great Tao. My determination is as firm as a rock. I have already waited decades for this moment. Now that my goal is right before me, how can my mind be disturbed? Am I unable to let go in the end? Xiao Chen had clearly known all the while that he had forgotten something very important. However, for the sake of the Tao in his heart, he did not wish to think about it, even though he knew that it was important. This was because remembering it might lose him this overwhelming power. He could not afford to bet on this, and was not willing to bet on this. However, no matter how Xiao Chen lied to himself, he still cared a lot for the things that he had forgotten. It seemed that after he saw Ying-Yu's sculpture, this feeling had seeped into the depths of his heart unawares. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and a great battle took place in his mind. Once he climbed this stairway, he would be able to arrive before the great Tao, to stand at the peak of cultivation. However, the moment Xiao Chen reached the top, he would never remember the things that he had forgotten. Leave no regrets behind. These words echoed in Xiao Chen's mind. It was unknown where this voice came from and why he suddenly thought of them. Leave no regrets behind. Leave no regrets behind. Xiao Chen murmured these 4 words to himself. Suddenly, he felt enlightened and a faint smile appeared on his face. If I really forgot something important and stepped into the great Tao, it would become an eternal regret. This regret will remain, making my state of mind forever imperfect. If Xiao Chen's state of mind was imperfect, he would never be able to reach the peak of martial emperor. I cannot leave any regrets in my heart. Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes and the golden light in them instantly vanished. His eyes became calm and clear, and his body stopped emitting that golden light. In the end, Xiao Chen gave up everything, regaining the peace in his mind. Ha! The gate instantly closed and the steps to the sky vanished one by one. Only the wooden sculpture remained, falling to the ground. Xiao Chen grabbed the sculpture and jumped down. With a few flashes, he arrived before the room Ying-Yu was locked up in. With her body sealed, Ying-Yu was incredibly weak. It seemed like even a gentle breeze could blow her away. When she saw Xiao Chen standing outside, she said coldly, "Why are you not seeking your great Tao? What are you doing here?" Xiao Chen tossed the wooden sculpture to Ying-Yu. Then, he replied, "The great Tao is important. However, there are some things that are more important, such as this." Ying-Yu caught the wooden sculpture and looked at Xiao Chen in shock. She said, "You still remember this wooden sculpture?" Xiao Chen smiled gently. The stern and grave expression that normally appeared on his fair face now seemed very gentle. He said, "I remember. I will never forget it." The moment Xiao Chen said that, his body turned illusionary and slowly vanished from this space within the Gate of Desire. Ha ha. This fellow is not likely to come out in the 10 breaths of time still left. Elder Shi, I believe you can announce the results of this trial of the ancient desolate tower already. There is no need to wait any longer, Li Xiuju said to Shi Heilong, smiling. Glancing coldly at Li Xiuju, Shi Heilong said, "Li Xiuju, you seem to be very biased against Xiao Chen. I heard that when he used an engraved card to enter the selection, you did everything you could to stop him, made things difficult for him. The trial of the ancient desolate tower represents the luck of the heavenly extermination union. The higher the ancient desolate tower is climbed, the more luck the heavenly extermination union will have. There are 5 seniors watching from above. You yourself know what you did. The seniors can see it clearly." Li Xiuju was stunned. However, his expression did not waver and he gave a carefree laugh. "Ha ha. Elder Shi, if you have no proof, you had best not say it. Furthermore, this is only a person who cannot clear the 5th floor, there is nothing worth anticipating in this." An elder pointed at the 5th floor of the ancient desolate tower and quavered in excitement, "Elder Shi, that spot of light seems to be coming out." Ignoring Li Xiuju, Shi Heilong quickly looked over. He saw a dim flickering spot of light in the 5th floor. That could be no one else but Xiao Chen. Ha ha ha. He cleared the 5th floor and is entering the 6th floor. Regardless of the result after this, the Heavenly Extermination Union's 100 years of luck will be maintained. Shi Heilong was stunned for a while before he laughed heartily. The ancient desolate tower had existed since the ancient era. In this age, no one knew who built it, how was it built, or for what purpose. All they knew was that the ancient desolate tower was similar to the great Jin nation's wind cloud arena, a miraculous building of the Tianwu continent that could affect the ethereal luck. The higher one climbed in the ancient desolate tower, the more luck that person would obtain. The Heavenly Extermination Union organized the trial of the ancient desolate tower so that they could obtain more luck. The higher the ancient desolate tower was climbed, the more luck the Heavenly Extermination Union would get. Naturally, as the person in charge of the trial, Shi Hailong would obtain more benefits than the others. No one has managed to clear the 5th floor for almost 1,000 years already. The world of cultivators has been in decline since the batch of the Thunder Emperor. However, when there is a rise, there will be a fall, and when there is a fall, there will be a rise. This is the rule of the Great Tao. Now, someone has cleared the 5th floor. This signifies that a great age of cultivation is being ushered in. The elders all discussed excitedly with one another, unable to conceal their happiness at all. Only Li Xiuju turned pale. His hands trembled and his lips quivered. His eyes filled with disbelief. Li Xiuju clenched his fists. How could this brat clear the 5th floor? Li Xiuju remembered how he had done his best back then to humiliate Xiao Chen, mocking him for overestimating himself. However, this now happened right before him. An inferior grade martial king that Li Xiuju obstructed with all his might had managed to tear his way through the obstacles, obtaining 100 consecutive victories. Then, he had managed to defeat other experts to secure one of the 20 spots. Now, Xiao Chen even reached a height that no one else had achieved in a millennium. If he was lucky, he might even ascend a few more floors. It was possible that Xiao Chen would reach the same heights that the Thunder Emperor had. When Li Xiuju thought of this, he felt his scalp go numb. He could not maintain his previous carefree attitude and said in a quivering voice, "Elder Shi, I am not feeling that well all of a sudden. I shall take my leave first." Shi Hailong revealed a playful smile as he turned around and asked, "Elder Li, do you not intend to continue watching? Xiao Chen might even clear a few more floors." The other people at the sides also smiled and added, "Indeed, you were fine just a while ago. Why are you suddenly feeling unwell? Are you feeling guilty?" Li Xiuju blushed and insisted sternly, "Nonsense. This old man has a magnanimous heart. This has been proven over long years. There is no point in our discussing this anymore. I shall take my leave first." Shi Hailong's expression turned cold. As he watched Li Xiuju leave, he said in a frosty voice, "Keep a close eye on him. If Xiao Chen really climbs to the 7th or 8th floor, restrain him immediately. We will charge him with the crime of wrecking the Heavenly Extermination Union's luck and harboring selfish intents." A few people trembled in their hearts. The factions within the Heavenly Extermination Union were very complex. Elder Shi probably wanted to use this opportunity to deal with Li Xiuju. The moment Shi Hailong spoke, the elders of his faction immediately and quietly trailed after Li Xiuju. Under the platform, Ding Fengqiu smiled bitterly to himself as he looked at the spot of light on the 5th floor. He sighed softly, "It is hard to surpass desire. I did not even dare to try and Chu Chaoyun was defeated miserably. I did not expect Xiao Chen to be able to clear it. I'm afraid that the gap between us will only increase from here on." Zhuo Mo's expression was very complicated as well. He smiled. 20 people took part in the trial of the ancient desolate tower, but in the end, it became a one-man show of him alone. After this, his status as the strongest youth in the 4 nations will probably be set in stone. The people who had gained a spot all had different expressions as they looked at the flickering spot of light in the ancient desolate tower. There were many reactions to this, some were envious and others jealous. There were also those who felt conflicted and filled with hesitation. The Holy Fire Manor's Leng Yun was one of them. Back then, he already knew that I was the one who attacked him. Given his personality, he will definitely not be benevolent about it. I still have not settled accounts with him for taking my origin flame. I cannot afford to wait for him to mature to deal with him. Leng Yun's eyes were clouded with doubt. When he looked at the ancient desolate tower, a cold look flashed in his eyes. He quietly left the crowd and headed for the desolate city branch of the Holy Fire Manor. Within the ancient desolate tower, Xiao Chen stood absent-mindedly before the gate of desire. He closed his eyes and thought back to his somewhat hazy experience. He stayed before the gate of desire for a long time without moving. Is this the desire of my heart? Would I be unscrupulous and cold-hearted in order to bet everything on this? It's not worth it. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and muttered, it's not worth it. The way of the great Tao is hard to seek, the peak of cultivation is hard to achieve. All I should seek is to not have any regrets. In this life, be it now or the future, I should not leave any regrets. Regardless of the situation, I will not become like that. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave and he drew his lunar shadow saber. Kai, Kai, Kai. Xiao Chen sent out several strands of saber chi to carve 4 words on the walls of the 5th floor, leave no regrets behind. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and revealed a faint smile. He did not receive any physical benefits. All he received were these 4 words. However, these 4 words were more important than any cultivation technique, martial technique, or natural treasure. After Xiao Chen overcame his desires, his state of mind would reach consummation. In the future, he will definitely not end up taking the wrong road on the path of cultivation. He had dealt with his heart demon in advance. Xiao Chen calmed himself and gently leapt up. He pierced the light barrier of the 5th floor and entered the 6th floor. Who? The moment Xiao Chen landed, he discovered himself in a snowy plain. An arctic wind howled, cutting at him like a knife. How cold! Xiao Chen shivered slightly before he quickly circulated his essence, forcing out the cold qi that entered him. Wind and snow covered Xiao Chen's front, all he saw was white. He could vaguely make out a tightly shut door in this boundless snowstorm. A voice appeared in his heart, quickly, go and open that door. The voice came from deep within him, so he did not doubt it at all. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and muttered, this cold qi does not seem harmful. However, it will wear one down over time. It would be a problem to endure this for a long time. The test in this floor was probably a test of the cultivator's willpower. It tested the cultivator to see if he could last all the way to opening the door. Xiao Chen did not think about anything else. He looked at the door's location and slowly made his way over. It was as Xiao Chen had expected. At the start, he moved very fast. He managed to travel 5 kilometers in one breath. However, his pace soon slowed, his feet growing heavy. The cold qi penetrated into his bones and his lips paled. The shielding effect of his essence became less effective, and every step extremely arduous. Xiao Chen remained silent as he walked alone without a word of complaint. There was only one thought in Xiao Chen's mind, I cannot stop moving. No matter how slow I go, even the road to heaven will eventually come to an end. It was unknown how long Xiao Chen walked. He started to feel his eyes close and his body stiffen. He was so cold that he could not think anymore. Suddenly, the door appeared before him. Ha! Xiao Chen did not hesitate to push the door open. At first, he relaxed. However, when he saw the scene awaiting him, he smiled bitterly. After clearing a snowfield, it is now a sea of fire. Hu Kai. The instant the door opened, a heatwave surged over. The alternating cold and heat made Xiao Chen feel like his bones would shatter. Even though Xiao Chen's physical body was extremely strong, he still felt that way. One can easily imagine what would happen if an ordinary cultivator appeared here. They would probably crush their jade pendant immediately and give up on this test. A bright red land filled Xiao Chen's vision. The ground cracked, each fissure an arm's length wide. As the heat surged, lava flowed out of the countless fissures. When Xiao Chen looked forward, he could faintly see pillars of flames. Xiao Chen did not hesitate. Raising his leg and stepping forward, he kept advancing. Before long, the blood flame shoes became as hot as a lit stove. Xiao Chen's feet started to blister. He endured the agony, frowning heavily in obvious pain. Xiao Chen immediately felt like tossing away his shoes and continuing unshod. However, his rationality overcame the impulse. The blood flame shoes were a medial-grade secret treasure. It could resist heat to a certain extent. If Xiao Chen threw them away, he would suffer even more damage by walking barefoot. This place was similar to the snowy plain, where one could not fly. Test-takers could only use their feet and walk. Sweat poured down Xiao Chen's body. He felt very tired. The place was simply unbearably hot, and he grew dizzy as a result. The blisters on his feet burst. All that was left was a layer of blood and flesh. The soles of his feet rubbed against the shoes with every step he took. That kind of pain was worse than being cut by knives. It was like thousands of ants biting the feet simultaneously. The world was like a huge furnace. Xiao Chen continued walking solitarily. No matter how much pain he felt or how tired he was, he did not stop walking. Xiao Chen had calmly analyzed the ordeals in his heart. This place was definitely testing the willpower of a cultivator. It would not present a situation so dangerous that one would die, but it would not let you continue walking on calmly as well. It would constantly flog him, torturing him, bringing him an extraordinary amount of pain. It would do its best to make him stop and give up. As Xiao Chen walked, blood dripped from his shoes. A bloody trail marked his path. Xiao Chen was like pilgrim, continuing to walk forward through strong faith. Everyone had only one chance at the ancient desolate tower. Xiao Chen's fatal weakness was his lower cultivation. Now that there was a chance for him here, he would not leave behind any regrets in this place. Trod, trod, trod. It was unknown how long Xiao Chen had walked. He had already lost track of time. Suddenly, a door appeared before him. Xiao Chen felt numb as he pushed the door open and looked through. He saw a mountain covered with knives and a door standing quietly at the top of the mountain. Xiao Chen walked in with heavy steps. He smiled coldly and said, "A mountain of knives, a sea of fire, and a plain of absolute cold. I want to see what other incredible things will appear after this and whether I can clear them or not." Like before, Xiao Chen could not fly in this mountain of knives. He could only rely on the strength of his physical body and bitterly climb the mountain. Xiao Chen's already miserable body immediately suffered stabs and became a very bloody mutilated sight that was too cruel to see. The pain was hard to endure. This test was very interesting. No matter how its form changed, there was one thing that would never change: it would never present a fatal situation. It was just endless torture, attacking your spirit, shaving away at your determination. As long as you did not stop, this suffering would never end, forcing you to give up. Xiao Chen traversed the mountain of knives and pushed open the door. Like before, what welcomed him was not the finish line. Instead, it was a land filled with poisonous gas. Xiao Chen drove his battered body onwards with ironclad determination. The poisonous gas pervaded the region, corroding his body. All his wounds felt like there were snakes and bugs biting them. Walk, 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 I cannot stop. Xiao Chen took one step at a time. He was only semi-conscious by now. He could not even clearly make out the path anymore. He nearly fell into the mud several times. Xiao Chen had to expend a lot of effort to climb back out before continuing his trek. After Xiao Chen crossed the land of poisonous gas, he pushed open the door at the end. However, it was still not the end. There was danger land after danger land. Xiao Chen had long grown inured to all this. He smiled bitterly and pressed on. All sorts of dangerous scenes appeared, one after another. Unimaginable places lay behind each door, but Xiao Chen cleared them all. This continued until Xiao Chen reached the 9th door. Feeling very weak, he opened the door, and no land of danger awaited him. A gentle light enveloped him. The pure white light was like immortal-grade medicine. It quickly healed all the wounds on his body. All of Xiao Chen's fatigue vanished. He felt a certain comfort throughout his body. The sudden ease that came after that unbearable torture was inebriating, it made one reluctant to awaken from that euphoria. After the light faded away, Xiao Chen opened his eyes and clenched his fist tightly. After all the torture, his physical body had become even stronger. Seeing his newly regrown skin, Xiao Chen revealed an expression of joy. He said softly, "Not only my strength increased, my defense increased as well. Unfortunately, there are no opportunities to test it out. One's efforts would eventually pay off." Xiao Chen was rewarded for his perseverance, his efforts had not been in vain. Xiao Chen looked around his surroundings. This should be the 6th floor of the ancient desolate tower. Very realistic statues stood in front of him. A rough count came to about 100 statues. Xiao Chen's gaze fell on the first statue at the very front and suddenly felt stunned. That statue wore white robes and had a blue headband on its head. His gaze was cold and he radiated calmness. His hands held a saber against his chest. Who else could this be aside from himself? Xiao Chen suppressed the doubts in his heart. He continued looking around. Although there were many statues he could not identify, he recognized quite a few of them. They were experts that were spoken about in the various countries' legends. Xiao Chen continued on and he even saw the Thunder Emperor, Sang-Mu, standing there. Xiao Chen muttered to himself, "It seems that everyone who passed the test of willpower on the 6th floor leaves a statue behind here. However, I did not expect that after several thousands of years, only about 100 people passed the 6th floor." Outside the ancient desolate tower, Shi Hailong and the other people on the platform were all very excited. This was because Xiao Chen had given them another surprise. He had cleared the 6th floor and was heading to the 7th. Shi Hailong laughed very heartily. After clearing the 6th floor, he would be able to leave behind a will statue of himself. This can be considered as him obtaining some of the ancient desolate tower's luck. This is the best reward for a cultivator on this floor. Xiao Chen is going to advance to the 7th floor. If he climbs one more floor, he would be able to reach the same height that the Thunder Emperor did 1,000 years ago. This fellow might really be able to create a miracle, and Heavenly Extermination Union Elder said, unable to contain his excitement. When Shi Hailong heard this, he became calmer instead. He said with a drawn-out smile, "Don't overthink this. It is rare to even get one person like the Thunder Emperor within 10,000 years. In the end, there is still a gap between Xiao Chen and him. It is already a big help to the Heavenly Extermination Union. The 7th floor, that place is filled with will statues left by some martial emperors. The tests of the martial emperors are not easy to pass." Shi Hailong sighed, feeling that it was a pity Xiao Chen's cultivation was still a little low. In another 2 years, he might have been a half-step martial monarch, and then he would have had a 70% chance of passing the test of a martial emperor, given his talent at combat. However, there was not much hope at this moment. Dee-da, dee-da. When Xiao Chen went through the mysterious light barrier, drops of essence liquid dripped down into his purple chi whirlpool, which had expanded by half. The process took 3 minutes this time. These 3 minutes were equivalent to half a year of cultivation, which stabilized Xiao Chen's cultivation as a medial grade martial king. Xiao Chen landed on the ground and appeared in the 7th floor of the ancient desolate tower. When Xiao Chen felt the vast energy in his body, he revealed a satisfied smile. This was worth his earlier effort to climb to the 7th floor. The light barrier increased Xiao Chen's cultivation greatly, allowing him to close the gap between him and the genius cultivators of the same generation. On the next floor, I might be able to reach the peak of medial grade martial king. I only have one attempt at the ancient desolate tower. I cannot waste it, Xiao Chen resolutely reminded himself. Now, he was even more eager to see what the 8th floor was like. Back then, the Thunder Emperor managed to reach the 8th floor. He would attempt to reach the 8th floor at least. Xiao Chen looked around the 7th floor and saw 10 statues. These statues were vastly different from the statues on the 6th floor. With a cursory glance, one could tell that the statues contained a boundless aura. They were also different from the statues of the martial sages. Their auras and bearing were vastly greater than those of the will statues of the martial sages. When Xiao Chen stood before a statue, he got the impression that it was alive. The statue's gazes were very deep, deterring one from staring directly into their eyes. Xiao Chen thought to himself and said softly, "These should be will statues as well. However, these will statues should be different in grade. The statues on the 6th floor are the most ordinary will statues. The ones on the 2nd floor are the ones left behind by martial sages. The ones on this 7th floor are probably from martial emperors." When Xiao Chen thought of this possibility, he looked the statues again and could not help but feel respect for them. Martial Emperor, the upper limit of martial cultivation, the peak of the great Tao. That was what all cultivators sought. It represented honor and glory. It represented the peak. And more, it represented strength. Every martial emperor was a legend in the Tianwu continent. For several millennia, there had not been any word of a new martial emperor. The legends of martial emperors were left by the older generations. However, these martial emperors had already vanished from the world long ago. Since the Thunder Emperor disappeared 1,000 years before, there had not been any news of new martial emperors. All the martial emperors seemed to have disappeared. Now that Xiao Chen witnessed the will statues left by martial emperors for himself, the emotions that he felt could be easily imagined. When Xiao Chen scrutinized the will statues, he suddenly exclaimed as his gaze stopped on the 4th statue. Bai Shuiye. This statue was wearing blue battle armor and he carried a serrated saber on his back as well. It looked exactly the same as the statue of Bai Shuiye on the 2nd floor. The only difference was that the pressure that Xiao Chen felt was vastly greater. Xiao Chen's respect for Bai Shuiye could not help but increase again. The will of Bai Shuiye on the 2nd floor was like a master to Xiao Chen. Although it was a test, it had been more like a senior bladesman giving pointers to a junior. Xiao Chen had benefited greatly from this. Xiao Chen had not expected to see Bai Shuiye again on this floor. He was very happy to learn that such a heroic person had reached martial emperor. Xiao Chen quickly walked up to the 4th statue and pointed at its forehead with his finger. "Brat, choose me instead. How is this little white face an attractive option? I will show you what a true bladesman is." TL note. Little white face. This is a Chinese slang for a pretty-faced man. This is usually used when a good-looking man relies on his looks to get a woman to support him. Basically, it's an insult. Just as Xiao Chen's finger was about to touch Bai Shuiye's forehead, the thunderous voice of the 1st statue on the right, a large man carrying a thick saber, resounded in the 7th floor. "Ha ha, old Lei, stop envying me. Just based on your looks, no one would dare choose you. Ha ha ha." The Bai Shuiye before Xiao Chen seemed to come alive. He laughed loudly and quickly pointed at Xiao Chen's forehead. Boom. Boom. Xiao Chen's surroundings trembled and became hazy. After a short moment, he appeared in a chaotic space. Xiao Chen was no longer surprised after his previous experience. He cupped his hand and said, "This junior is Xiao Chen. Greetings to senior again." Bai Shuiye raised his eyebrows as a brilliant light shone in his eyes. It was like Bai Shuiye had seen through him completely, like Xiao Chen could not hide any secrets. "No wonder you chose me. It turns out that you have broken my will statue on the 2nd floor. Are you thinking of shattering my will statue here as well?" Bai Shuiye asked calmly as he looked at Xiao Chen with a smile that did not seem like a smile. Xiao Chen replied somewhat awkwardly, "How could it be? I only hoped that senior would guide me some more, and that I would pass the test of this floor." Bai Shuiye said somewhat angrily, "Young man, you should not be so humble. You can be more confident. You were able to break my martial sage will statue. You might be able to break my martial emperor will statue as well. If you don't even have this confidence, then you can forget about climbing to the 8th floor. The 8th floor is filled with the sovereign martial emperor's will statues. Let me ask you again, are you confident? TL note. This popped out of nowhere, but I did some research. Martial emperors are split into 3 levels: minor heavenly, greater heavenly, and sovereign. These levels are also split into the 3 grades like other cultivation realms, bringing a total of 9 grades in the martial emperor realm. Bai Shuihei's final sentence was said sternly, his tone heavy. Xiao Chen could not help but feel a pressure in his heart. Xiao Chen nearly replied yes. However, he realized what he was about to do and caught himself, startled. The other party was a martial emperor of the saber. Xiao Chen was a mere martial king. How could he say that he was confident? That would be overestimating himself. Xiao Chen swallowed his words and said softly, "Senior, stop joking. It would already be great if I can exchange a few moves with you. How could this junior hope to shatter your will statue?" Seeing that Xiao Chen had not fallen for his tricks, Bai Shuiye showed deeper interest in his eyes. He smiled and said, "Not bad. If you had said yes, I would have increased the number of moves from 10 to 20. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had not said yes. 20 moves were double of 10 moves. However, seeing that you managed to break my will statue, I think I will still provide you with pointers for 20 moves." Bai Shuiye said somewhat craftily, suddenly changing his stance. Xiao Chen's spirits fell. Bai Shuiye was clearly toying with his feelings, shattering Xiao Chen's image of him as a martial emperor. Xiao Chen had not expected this martial emperor to be so mischievous, playing pranks on a junior. Frowning, Bai Shuiye asked, "What's wrong? You seem very happy. In that case, let's add another 10 moves." Xiao Chen immediately revealed a conflicted expression. He quickly countered, "How am I happy? There is nothing of the sort." Bai Shuiye nodded and said, "You have a mighty martial emperor like me to give you pointers and yet you still become angry. Brat, you don't know what's good for you. Let's add another 10 moves." Xiao Chen was now completely speechless. He stopped trying to talk back. The character of this Bai Shuiye as a martial emperor is so different from when he met him as a martial sage. When Bai Shuiye saw Xiao Chen's astounded expression, he laughed heartily again and smiled quite happily. "Brat, I was just messing with you. The test for this floor is not to exchange moves with me." "In that case, what is the test for this floor?" Xiao Chen asked doubtfully. "There is a huge gap between martial sage and martial emperor. You chose me because of your status as a bladesman. There is no difference between 10 moves and 20 moves, or even 1 move." Bai Shuiye stopped smiling and said seriously, "You only need to receive 1 attack from me. If you don't die, you pass. Do you dare to attempt this? Receive the attack of a martial emperor. Me. Do I dare to accept?" The attack of a martial emperor. Xiao Chen paused and started thinking very hard. Even though it was an attack from a martial emperor, his opponent would not use a strength exceeding that of Xiao Chen's cultivation. Otherwise, he would not even need an attack to kill him. All Bai Shuiye had to do was glare at him and use the natural laws to kill Xiao Chen. Of course, he would definitely fail the test. However, this attack was definitely not going to be easy to receive, especially when Bai Shuiye said that Xiao Chen would pass as long as he did not die. What did this mean? This meant that Xiao Chen would definitely not be able to break this attack. It was just a question of how badly he would be injured. This was a peak martial emperor. Naturally, Xiao Chen did not doubt the veracity of his words. However, Xiao Chen still felt uncertain. So he asked, "What if I die?" When Bai Shuiye heard this, he could not help but laugh. What else is there after death? From dust you came, to dust you shall return. Naturally, everything comes to an end when you die. So, think carefully before you make a decision. Don't ever think that giving up is a shameful thing. The strength that I will put into this attack will definitely not exceed your cultivation. However, the difference between us is not as simple as cultivation. One attack, just one attack. Once I survive this attack, I can reach the 8th floor. However, this attack is potentially fatal. Once I agree, I will no longer have a chance to give up. All I can do is face death. Xiao Chen could not help but hesitate. No matter who it was, when faced with life or death, they would feel some hesitation. This was especially so if the other party was a genuine martial emperor. If someone agreed without a thought, then that person might really die. Back when the Thunder Emperor was in the ancient desolate tower, he was only 21 years old. His cultivation was higher than mine. What went through his mind when he faced this? Xiao Chen could not help but look at the lunar shadow saber in his hand. If Zhao was here, given her experience, she would be able to come out with an answer for him immediately. At this moment, Xiao Chen could not help but miss Zhao. Back then, she had accompanied the Thunder Emperor and climbed to the 8th floor with him, a height that no one had reached for 10,000 years. Zhao definitely understood this ancient desolate tower much better than Xiao Chen. Should I take on this attack or not? Xiao Chen experienced a hesitation that he had never felt before. Dummy, why do you not dare to take it on? You just need to stay alive. Why are you so afraid? Suddenly, a melodious voice rang in his head. Xiao Chen immediately rejoiced and asked, Zhao, when did you wake up? From within the lunar shadow saber, as per Zhao's custom, she ridiculed Xiao Chen. Stop your nonsense. He made all that effort to give you some pointers, so stop saying meaningless things. Just agree to it. He is just a minor heavenly martial emperor and he dares to put on such airs. Xiao Chen felt put on the spot. Regardless of what kind of martial emperor he is still a martial emperor. You may look down on him, but he is still able to crush me with a finger. When Bai Shui saw the odd expression on Xiao Chen's face, doubt flashed in his eyes. After a while, he said, Who is hiding there? Come out. Xiao Chen's right hand moved forward. The lunar shadow saber in his hand started to tremble uncontrollably, like it would be unsheathed at any moment. Boom. Xiao Chen did his best to hold Zhao back but still failed in the end. Then, she appeared with a melodious hum. When Bai Shui saw Zhao, he relaxed. He smiled and said, No wonder I was thinking that you seemed familiar. So, you are Sang Emu's inheritor. Little Zhao, it has been a few thousand years and you dare to slight this minor heavenly martial emperor senior. You are ambitious, really ambitious. However, Zhao did not have a happy expression at all. She seemed depressed as she looked at Bai Shui. This chap, I wasted a year's effort because of you. Later, I'll have to go and swallow up that saber spirit again. Bai Shui had a lukewarm smile as he said, There is always a price for speaking behind another person's back. Xiao Chen suddenly understood. The statue the Thunder Emperor challenged 3,000 years ago was Bai Shui as well. Although it happened in a different way, 3,000 years later, he ended up challenging the same person. In the end, he would be stopped by Bai Shui. Bai Shui turned back to Xiao Chen and said, There is no one disturbing you now. Make your own decision. Do you dare to receive an attack from me or not? Xiao Chen had made his decision the instant Zhao came out. Now that Bai Shui asked again, he did not hesitate to say, I dare to. Bai Shui smiled gently and did not say anything more. He grabbed the saber on his back, quickly drew it, and thrust it at Xiao Chen. The attack was extremely sharp. Ka Ca. Xiao Chen did not even think. He immediately drew the lunar shadow saber and held it across his chest. He stared very tightly at Bai Shui's right hand, which was holding his saber. The nervousness that Xiao Chen expected did not appear. In the instant before the battle, all his hesitations and misgivings disappeared, he became very calm. When Zhao saw this, her eyes lit up. She revealed a faint smile like a crescent moon. The person who could pull out the Thunderwood sword is definitely not trash, Zhao thought to herself. Shoo. Xiao Chen did not have to wait long for Bai Shuihe's attack. The attack was purely an attack. Bai Shuihe did not use his aura to pressure Xiao Chen, nor his mental energy to confuse Xiao Chen's heart. This attack was just a plain hack without any intricacy. Bai Shuihe simply leapt into the air and hacked down with a saber light. Xiao Chen found the attack incredulously simple. There are hundreds of weak points revealed in this attack. I would be able to break it by casually choosing one. This martial emperor's attack is too much of a joke. Wait, that's not right. If it was so simple, then how would it kill people? There must be something I do not know about, something profound. I should keep watching. Xiao Chen's mind raced as fast as lightning. After he analyzed all the information, he discovered the trick to it. The opponent left his center open. All I have to do is to stab towards his heart and he will be forced to pull his saber back to defend. However, he is wielding his saber with one hand. The way he holds the saber places it at a 90-degree angle from his chest. If I attack his chest, he can twist his saber quickly. Given the length of his serrated saber, he would be able to injure me first. The height at which he jumped is exactly half a body's length higher than me. His feet are spread apart and can change direction at any time. No matter where I flee to, I will not be able to run. The direction of the attack seems like it is moving from up to down. However, his body is tilted forward by 30 degrees, so this attack can also be seen as down to up. The more Xiao Chen analyzed, the more tricks he saw in this plain attack. His opponent seemed to have considered everything already. It was very plain without any intricacy. This was probably what was meant by the adage, the great Tao is revealed in extreme simplicity. When Bai Shuihe was a martial sage, his four-season saber technique had unlimited forms. The amount of states and mysterious phenomena it displayed was dizzying. However, Xiao Chen still managed to find a way to deal with them at the crucial moment. He even managed to counterattack. However, now that Xiao Chen's opponent reached Martial Emperor, his simple attack seemed unbreakable and unblockable. No wonder Bai Shuihe said that there was no difference between one move and 10 moves now that he reached this cultivation realm. This move contained at least 10 saber moves. It would not seem exaggerated if it were thousands of saber moves. I should use the roaming dragon's 9 transformations. No, he will be able to figure out my true body with one glance. Then, he would be able to hack me in half in an instant. I can't use Wukui blossoms, either. By the time the flower bud forms, the saber will have already reached my neck. As for lightning evasion, that will take too long. So it will not work. Many thoughts flashed in Xiao Chen's mind during a period that was shorter than the blink of an eye. Xiao Chen thought of many ways to deal with this attack. Then, he eliminated all of them as they would not work. Dummy. You just need to stay alive. Why do you not dare to take it on? When the saber light was just a meter away from Xiao Chen, he recalled Zhao's words from before. Suddenly, he felt enlightened and heaved a sigh of relief. I really am a dummy. There is no way I can dodge this attack or break it. Bai Shuihe already gave me the answer at the start. I just have to survive this. In the end, before the attack landed, Xiao Chen had fallen into his habit of analyzing the attack, thinking about how to break or dodge it. Xiao Chen knew very clearly that there was no way to dodge or break this move. All he could do was hope to survive. However, surviving was not an easy task, either. Xiao Chen had considered simply trying his luck, but that might just send him to his death even sooner. Even so, that thought gave him an idea on how to deal with this. Shoo. At the crucial moment, Xiao Chen did not retreat. He swung his saber up and attacked towards his opponent's opening. Bai Shuihe smiled faintly. He thought to himself, I already told you to just survive. Yet, You overestimate yourself and try to injure me. In that case, I can only send you on your way." Bai Shui unhurriedly twisted his hand. The blade of his saber rotated downwards naturally and headed for Xiao Chen's neck. He disregarded Xiao Chen's attack entirely. "Indeed, it is as I expected. There are no weak points at all and my opponent has no worries whatsoever. Nonetheless, this is good for me as well." The throat was a very vital spot. When ordinary cultivators got hit there, they would definitely die. Naturally, Xiao Chen was no exception. Since he wanted to survive this test, he had to know which vital spot his opponent was targeting. Once he determined that, the attack would be easier to handle. Huang Dang. Xiao Chen relaxed his hand and dropped the lunar shadow saber. He opened his right fist and used his palm to strike the flat of his opponent's blade. Fu Si. The saber's blade had already come to within 1 millimeter of Xiao Chen's throat. When he struck it, the blade moved downwards and slashed a horrific deep wound on his chest. Blood immediately spurted out. The saber light stabbed into his body, making Xiao Chen's organs churn. He tasted something sweet in his mouth. He could not help but vomit a mouthful of blood. Xiao Chen's face was very pale but he still smiled. He said, "The might of this attack has reached its peak. It is worthy of being an attack from a martial emperor. However, I am still alive." Bai Shuihei's expression suggested that he was at a loss. The tip of his saber had clearly been a millimeter away. Yet, his opponent managed to knock it off target at the crucial moment. "Look, that spot of light is going up again. Xiao Chen is entering the 8th floor." The elders who were paying attention to Xiao Chen all exclaimed excitedly. The higher he climbed, the more luck the Heavenly Extermination Union would obtain. Naturally, these people would end up receiving more benefits as well. Shi Heilong rubbed his eyes gently, not daring to believe what he just saw. Even though he was filled with confidence in Xiao Chen, he had not expected him to pass the test of the 7th floor and proceed to the 8th. That was the farthest the Thunder Emperor had managed to get in his time. He really reached the 8th floor. What a good fellow. Back then, when the Thunder Emperor reached the 8th floor, he was already 21 years old. From what I heard, this Xiao Chen is not even 20 yet. Looking from this angle, doesn't this mean that Xiao Chen already surpassed the Thunder Emperor from that time? Ha ha, what did I say earlier? I hit it right on the nail, didn't I? When he first cleared the 1st floor, I already said that Xiao Chen would definitely surpass the Thunder Emperor. You guys did not believe it then. You must be feeling very foolish now. The old man on the platform who made a prediction about Xiao Chen seemed to be the most excited. A few people at the side said, "Ma Hupao, you weren't so sure at that time. Now, you're so cocky about it." TL note, the name Ma Hupao in Chinese also literally means firing after the horse. This has the meaning of giving advice in hindsight or belated action. This is kind of a pun on his name and what he did. Shi Heilong stopped smiling. He nodded as he said softly, "Old Ma, make preparations and pass on my orders. We can deal with Li Xiuju now." When the old man with the family name Ma heard this, he quickly said in a respectful manner, "Old Shi, rest assured. You can leave everything to me. That bastard with the family name Li will not be able to escape." Everyone here all knew that after this trial, Shi Heilong's position in the Heavenly Extermination Union would definitely soar. Now was definitely a good time to hug his thighs tightly. TL note, hug his thighs. This means to cling to someone influential. When a few of the elders at the side saw Elder Ma rushing off to fulfill Shi Heilong's orders, they all revealed envy in their eyes. This was a worthwhile errand. "Old Shi, do you have any more orders? The few of us can carry them out," they said, smiling. Shi Heilong was somewhat stunned. He smiled and said, "There is nothing else, just continue watching. It was through everyone's efforts that we managed to find Xiao Chen this time. I will definitely let the 5 seniors know about this." The 8th floor of the ancient desolate tower was completely empty. Only an ancient bronze door stood in the center, leading to an unknown place. The bronze door was shut tightly. The many mysterious engraved talisman scripts on it gave off a faint spiritual light. When Xiao Chen went through the previous light barrier, the purple essence liquid continued dripping for 10 minutes before it stopped. When Xiao Chen landed, his cultivation had firmly stabilized at peak medial grade Martial King. He could not help but reveal a wide grin. Xiao Chen managed to shorten the gap in cultivation in this trip to the ancient desolate tower. When Xiao Chen saw the bronze door, he paused and thought for a while. When Xiao Chen was about to go over and investigate it further, Zhao, who had followed him up, said, "Hold on. Heal your injuries first and then properly comprehend Bai Shuihei's earlier attack. As long as you can even comprehend a tiny bit of that attack, which contained all sorts of saber techniques, you will become undefeatable in your generation." Agreeing with Zhao, Xiao Chen stopped walking. In terms of style, Bai Shuihei's move was definitely at the peak for sabers. Since it had not been long after that, he would take advantage of this time to try and comprehend something from it. Xiao Chen sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, entering deep contemplation. At the same time, his purple chi whirlpool spun quickly and strands of vigorous essence healed the wound on his chest. When Zhao looked at the ancient bronze door in the 8th floor, a complicated expression appeared on her face. Eventually, she sighed softly, appearing very melancholic. After a while, Xiao Chen opened his eyes and looked at Zhao. He asked, "Zhao, do you know what is behind that door?" Zhao thought for a long time before suggesting, "Xiao Chen, let's stop here. Stop climbing the tower." Xiao Chen nodded and said, "All right, we will stop, then." When Zhao saw Xiao Chen reply straightforwardly, she asked, "You are not even going to ask why?" Xiao Chen smiled and said, "What is the point of asking? If it is something that you should say, naturally, you would tell me. If you do not tell me, then it would be pointless to ask. I just need to know that you will not harm me, that will do. If you tell me not to go up, then I will listen to your advice." A feeling of warmth stirred in Zhao's heart. She did not expect that Xiao Chen would be able to so resolutely resist the temptation of the 9th floor and choose to trust her. "As you have said, I will not harm you. The benefits that you obtained by climbing to the 8th floor should be sufficient for you already." Xiao Chen did not continue to linger on this topic. Instead, he moved on to the matter that he was more concerned about. "Tell me about this first, what do you mean by needing to swallow that saber spirit again?" When Zhao heard this, she appeared somewhat frustrated. "I still somewhat underestimated the techniques of the Clear Sky sect. The saber spirit in the lunar shadow saber is much stronger than I expected. Even though I had swallowed it, it was not willing to merge with me. It even considerably slowed my progress in nourishing the lunar shadow saber into a divine weapon. Now that that fellow dragged me out, that saber spirit managed to escape my grasp again. I will have to start from scratch once more. However, you don't have to worry, I still have the upper hand after all." When Xiao Chen heard this, he relaxed. The two had not met for a long time, so they started chatting about the 8th floor on the 8th floor. Zhao seemed to be pretty happy about being in the ancient desolate tower. She spoke of how the Thunder Emperor cleared the floors and some of his experience. "However, in a short period, you managed to climb from a martial disciple to where you are today. This is very difficult to imagine." When Zhao looked at the current Xiao Chen and compared him to the Xiao Chen she first met, she sighed softly. Before Xiao Chen could feel proud, Zhao changed the topic and ridiculed him. "However, you are still too weak. Like before, you are still unable to defeat your own weapon spirit. Continue to do your best, trashy master." Zhao smiled gently and transformed into a beam of white light to return to the lunar shadow saber. Xiao Chen shook his head and smiled bitterly. He glanced at the ancient bronze door and not longer hesitated. Xiao Chen took out the jade pendant and crushed it in his hand. The instant the jade pendant broke, the ancient desolate tower ejected him. Shoo! A white-robed figure with a blue strip of cloth around his forehead appeared in midair. Then, he slowly floated down. Shi Hailong had a big smile as he jumped off the platform. He led a group of elders as he parted the crowd and headed for Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, you have indeed not disappointed me. Since the Heavenly Extermination Union started the trial of the ancient desolate tower, you're the second person to reach the 8th floor. Xiao Chen said courteously, many thanks to Elder Shi and the Heavenly Extermination Union for giving me this opportunity. After that, Sha Xian, Zuo Mo, Zhang Zimo, and the others all came over to congratulate Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen thanked all of them by cupping his fist respectfully to them. At this moment, Shi Hailong appeared to be in even higher spirits than Xiao Chen. He gathered the crowd together and said, I will now announce that this trial of the ancient desolate tower is completed. I look forward to seeing all your progress 2 years from now. I hope you will all obtain even better results in the 5-nation youth competition. A bunch of trash. You think that you are no longer trash after clearing the ancient desolate tower. Xiao Chen, get out here. I have been waiting a long time for you. At this moment, a disharmonious voice rang out. When everyone looked up, they saw Xie Ziwen and his martial uncle. They had broken through the blockade of the Heavenly Extermination Union and appeared before everyone. Shi Hailong's expression sank. He looked at the old man behind Xie Ziwen and said, Gong Haoyu, your evil moon pavilion may be very powerful in the great Jin nation. However, don't forget that this is the ancient desolate land, the place where the Heavenly Extermination Union rules. Shi Hailong felt extremely frustrated. Xiao Chen had just managed to climb to the 8th floor, a once-in-a-thousand-years kind of joyous occasion. Shi Hailong had not expected the two people he did not wish to see the most to appear in front of him right before the event came to a perfect close. Gong Haoyu said coldly, I am not here to cause trouble today. This is just the squabbles between the younger generation. Don't use the Heavenly Extermination Union to pressure me. Even if your union chief were here, reason would still be on my side. Shi Hailong frowned and said, what do you want? Gong Haoyu glanced coldly at Xiao Chen and said, this brat prevented my evil moon pavilion from participating in the selection for the ancient desolate tower. Regardless of the situation, he has to give us an account for this. When Xie Ziwen looked at Xiao Chen, who stood out of the crowd, his glare filled with hatred. If he had not been careless and gotten defeated by Xiao Chen, he would have been the one enjoying all this attention. Xiao Chen, do you dare to fight with me again? Xie Ziwen shouted expressionlessly. When Shi Hailong heard that, he was stunned. He immediately sent a voice transmission to Xiao Chen. Don't let him provoke you. Your strengths were almost on par before this. He clearly knows that your cultivation increased greatly in the ancient desolate tower, and yet he is here to challenge you. He must have a secret technique that can increase his strength temporarily. The most important thing is that you just emerged from the ancient desolate tower. You currently possess great luck. If you lose, he will snatch away all the luck you accumulated in the ancient desolate tower. So, don't ever let him provoke you. In the future, after you mature, you will be able to easily destroy him with one finger. Shi Hailong's tone sounded very anxious. He said a lot of things in one breath, weighing the pros and cons of accepting the challenge as well as doing his best to prevent Xiao Chen from agreeing. Shi Hailong had no choice but to be very cautious. If Xiao Chen was defeated, the luck that the Heavenly Extermination Union obtained would also be affected. If that was the case, all his efforts would be for naught. Sha Xian, Zhang Zimo, and the others also gave the same advice. Xiao Chen, don't agree to it. This fellow must have come prepared. He's waiting for you to fall into his trap. When Xie Ziwen saw Xiao Chen remaining silent, he mocked, is that all the courage you have? How dare you even compare yourself to the Thunder Emperor? Xiao Chen, you disappoint me. Xiao Chen took 2 steps forward and carefully sized up Xie Zuan with his gaze. Then, he said, as you wish, come to the arena. Xie Zuan laughed loudly and leapt onto the largest arena in the Tianwu Plaza. He acted like he had already won the match as he said, "Good, I was just waiting for you to say this." When Shi Hailong heard this, he said anxiously, "Xiao Chen, don't be rash." Xiao Chen replied, "Elder Shi, rest assured. Naturally, I have my ways of dealing with this." Shi Hailong shook his head, sighed softly, and did not say anything more. Xiao Chen's fight was of great importance. Even if he wanted to stop it, there was nothing he could do if Xiao Chen himself was willing. The trial of the ancient desolate tower was an important matter in the ancient desolate land. Countless people had already gathered outside the Tianwu Plaza long ago. However, they had all been stopped outside the plaza by the Heavenly Extermination Union's people. Now that the trial was over, the situation outside turned chaotic due to the interference of the Evil Moon Pavilion. Droves of cultivators flocked to the Tianwu Plaza. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground. His figure flashed through the air and landed on the arena in an instant. That person in white is the person who climbed to the 8th floor. Why is he only a medial grade martial king? Is that right? That should be correct. From the outside, I managed to see that he was the last person to come out. Cultivation is not the only thing that determines a cultivator's strength. However, this Xie Zuan is really vicious. The other party has just come out of the ancient desolate tower. If he defeats this person, then he will be able to snatch away all the luck of this person. Without any trump cards, he would definitely not dare to challenge Xiao Chen at this point in time. This is really interesting. The crowd discussed the recent occurrence. Some of the cultivators with better insight managed to guess Xie Zuan's purpose in challenging Xiao Chen. It was currently noon. The blazing sun shone mercilessly on everyone. Xie Zuan looked at Xiao Chen and said coldly, "You really dared to come up. The people who injure me, Xie Zuan, never have a good ending. I will be taking away the luck that you gained today." Shoo. Right after Xie Zuan spoke, he raised his state of fire to its limit. This time, he did not dare to be careless at all, neither did he dare to hold back. Xie Zuan sent out a palm strike, and a sea of flames appeared around him, moving like layer upon layer of waves. Heatwaves spread throughout the surroundings, instantly raising the air temperature. Shi Hailong's expression changed. He said, "This fellow did indeed come prepared. He has comprehended his state of fire to the limit already." Ka Ca. Xiao Chen's expression remained unperturbed. He placed his right hand on the lunar shadow saber's hilt and drew it at lightning speed. Boom! Boom! Thunder roared as Xiao Chen leapt into the air. A purple saber light appeared and he hacked down from overhead. This was the attack that the martial emperor Bai Shuai executed earlier. When Xie Zuan saw Xiao Chen's attack, a disdainful smile appeared on his face. "This is interesting. You are full of openings. The person styling himself as the white-robed bladesman, fall for me." Boom! The sea of flames surged around Xie Zuan. He released red lights from his palm again and again. The huge flame rippled and formed a smooth palm. A huge flaming palm manifested and the flames surged, heading for Xiao Chen's unprotected chest. Xiao Chen recalled the grace of Bai Shui's attack and tilted his body slightly. The angle was sufficient for that huge flame palm to brush past his shoulder. Xiao Chen twisted his wrist downwards, and the saber moved from top to down. The attack naturally turned into a stab. Fu Si. Xiao Chen landed and the tip of his saber penetrated Xie Zuan's chest by about 1 centimeter. Blood immediately spurted out. Everything was within Xiao Chen's plan, there were no deviations at all. He calmly told Xie Zuan, "You have lost." Before that disdainful smile on Xie Zuan's face faded away, Xiao Chen had stabbed a vital spot on his chest while Xie Zhuan only sent out one palm strike. If Xiao Chen pushed his saber in a little further, Xie Zhuan would immediately lose his life. What happened? How did I lose? That attack was clearly full of openings. At the very best, that saber light was a little odd. How did it stab me in an instant? Xie Zhuan now had a stunned expression. He could not understand how he lost despite thinking about it. He was not the only person who did not understand. The thousands of cultivators present found it very strange too. One move, only one move, Xiao Chen unexpectedly defeated Xie Zhuan in one move. The onlookers remembered the big fight between the two of them just 7 days ago. At that time, Xiao Chen had defeated Xie Zhuan after 100 moves only because of Xie Zhuan's carelessness. However, after 7 days, he unexpectedly finished off the other party with one move. The crowd fell utterly silent. Everyone stared at Xiao Chen in shock. Zhuo Mo revealed a deep, pondering look before saying, "There is more than meets the eye to this saber strike." Ding Fengqiu said softly, "I just managed to notice this. The movements are closely linked with one another. It looked like there were hundreds of openings, but in reality, there was none. However, there are still some flaws with the changing of positions. This is probably because it is a newly learned technique." Zhang Zimo nodded enviously. "I wonder what benefits he managed to obtain on the upper floors. Unexpectedly, he gained such strength." After Shi Heilong recovered from his mild astonishment, he finally reacted. He smiled and said, "This brat, no wonder he was so confident. I worried for nothing. I have not lost yet. It is impossible for me to lose." Suddenly, something odd happened. Xie Zhuan grabbed Xiao Chen's saber with his hand and then quickly moved backwards. After that, he took out a medicinal pill and popped it into his mouth. Boom! The medicinal pill immediately melted and Xie Zhuan's aura soared rapidly. His hair and clothes fluttered as strong winds howled behind him. Bang! Xie Zhuan ignored the wound on his chest and let loose another palm strike. A huge flame palm the size of a small hill appeared and pressed towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly. Unexpectedly, this huge flame palm gave him a sense of danger. Xiao Chen did not block blindly. He pushed off the ground and retreated backwards. Pa! When the flame palm hit the ground, a palm-shaped pit appeared in the arena. Countless stone shards blasted out into the surroundings. Shi Heilong said sullenly, "Half-step martial monarch, what kind of medicinal pill is that? How could Xie Zhuan's strength be boosted to half-step martial monarch in an instant?" The flow of the battle reversed instantly. Xie Zhuan, who had swallowed a mysterious medicinal pill, suddenly became as strong as a half-step martial monarch. As Xie Zhuan fired off palm strikes, a berserk essence poured out of him with the torrent of attacks. This prevented Xiao Chen from counterattacking. Bang! 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 Explosions rang out continuously. Xie Zhuan's frenetic offensive completely shattered the resilient arena, reducing it to a pile of rubble. He is very strong. However, he became a half-step martial monarch only by forceful means. His aura is unstable. Although his energy seems quite wild, it is not that dense. I should wait a while longer. Xiao Chen calmly analyzed the situation. His figure flashed and headed for another arena. Hu Kai. Xie Zhuan quickly followed after him, sticking tightly to him. The two figures flashed and landed on another arena. Xie Zhuan smiled and said, "Xiao Chen, aren't you very powerful? Why aren't you attacking? Let's see where you can run to." 1,000 flaming palms. Xie Zhuan took a deep breath and released a resplendent red light from his right palm. Like a miniature sun, the light seemed as bright as daylight. Boom! Xie Zhuan spat out a mouthful of turbid qi before shouting a war cry. Then, he thrust the palm that shone as brightly as the sun forward. The palm strike blasted out and flaming palms rained down like a meteor shower aimed at Xiao Chen. Such a large AoE attack could not be dodged. Xiao Chen raised his head to look at the rain of flames that filled the sky. He muttered, "It is time to end this. A half-step martial monarch is merely this strong." The purple chi whirlpool in Xiao Chen's body spun quickly. A surging, pure lightning attributed essence flowed through his meridians and poured into his saber. The energy that Xiao Chen poured into his saber was extremely dense. It filled the saber without leaking at all. The pitch-black saber immediately flickered with a bright purple light. Its very plainness created a sharp contrast to Xie Ziwen's berserk essence. "Break!" Xiao Chen shouted as he thrust his saber forward. The flaming palms descending from the sky immediately burst apart. "Break! Break! Break!" Xiao Chen did not move from his spot as he faced the rain of flaming palms. His feet remained rooted to the ground as he stabbed at all the flaming palms flying at him. Without exception, all the flaming palms that were stabbed shattered into countless sparks before vanishing completely. Xiao Chen made it seem effortless, as if the berserk essence directed at him were only tiles. Bang! 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 When the flaming palms that missed Xiao Chen struck the ground, they blasted the arena into a pitiful state. Cracks covered the arena as a cloud of dust filled the air. Everyone clearly knew that these flaming palms might look small and weak, but they had extraordinary might. They were definitely not tiles. However, when facing the flames that filled the sky, the white-robed bladesman calmly shattered the flaming palms with ease. Such a large difference seemed incredible. After all, these flaming palms were very strong. This created confusion in everyone's hearts. When Shi Hailong saw this scene, his restless heart relaxed. Given this, Xiao Chen had a 50% chance of victory at the very least. Xie Ziwen's chest tightened. What he had eaten was a rank 7 blood essence pill. It could raise his strength by 50% for the duration for a jaw stick to burn. TL note: in ancient China, the duration for a jaw stick to burn is considered to be 30 minutes. For brewing a pot of tea, that is 15 minutes.